4 dead, more injured in a shooting at a Georgia high school. Spread quickly across the country. Lots of reactions to it, some just reprehensible. But let's talk about the police response to an active shooter at Apalachee High School in Winder, Georgia. It is confirmed now that 4 people have been killed and 9 others were transported to the hospital for injuries. School was placed in a hard lockdown. Students were carefully released to their parents. Most students were released to their parents. Suspect in custody, alive. And what was the weapon of choice? AR style weapon. Who needs gun reform? Gun should just be free flowing. Oh, that's right, they are. It's, as I do this live show and we have story, yes, let's just stop for a second after story about these school shootings.
With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show.
I wonder what people who are so committed to these assault weapons have to say. What do you say privately? We know what they tweet out. But again, now we're not even talking black and white. The bullets don't have names on them potentially. It's just anybody could die at any moment. Can you help reconcile that?
No, I think they make their public statements, and I think they don't talk about it amongst themselves. I think they just don't talk about it because they don't actually care about it. Why would they talk about something that they don't care about? And I know people who are very conservative, very Republican, Trump supporters, whatever. And whenever something big like that comes out in the news, they don't talk about it, right? They just go on with their lives as if nothing has happened. If anything comes out about like the left or Biden, though, they're all about it. And maybe part of it is like the microcosm that they live in and the things that are prioritized within the news that they tend to consume, but they just don't talk about it. I think that's what it is. And maybe they're thinking about it on their own, but if they are, I mean, who cares? Because in the meantime, while we've been thinking about this, when was Columbine 20, 30 years ago? While we're all thinking about it and talking about it and having debates about it, children are dying in schools. And, when this story first came out, I thought, oh, well, it's been a while since I heard about a school shooting. But then it dawned on me that school has only been back in session for a week or two. These kids are in back to school mode. They're excited to see their friends, are excited to see what classes they have. I remember what back to school season was like, and it was a fun time. And it's so sad that these children went back to school, and within like the first week or whatever of school, this is what they had to deal with. I was at the store yesterday or the other day. I was buying some fabric, and there was a high school girl there, and she was buying ribbon for her homecoming mom. And if you're not from Texas or the South, if you don't know what that is, homecoming is a big, big deal. I didn't really know about it until I moved to Texas, but you wear these big old mums on your on your chest, and they have all these ribbons and bells and whistles and baubles and things like that. Homecoming season here in Texas is a big deal. It's a lot of fun. It's usually in like the first or second week of October. There's like a carnival, there's a football game, everything. That's what these kids should be doing right now, not dealing with something like a school shooting with active shooters in their school. And again, I mentioned this in the last story, they have to be in those buildings,
Yep.
A lot of us can opt out of being in public spaces. We don't have to go to places that have a lot of people there. We don't have to go to like big events. We don't even have to go into a work office building if we don't want to anymore. But these children have to be there, and they're so vulnerable, and no one is doing anything to protect them.
And you see, this is why among the reasons I love you so much, because again, that perspective, we're holding these kids hostage.
Yeah.
They are legally obligated here. We could at least give them the best opportunity to survive this school day. That's really all we're asking for here. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about the victims. A lot about the victims who just showed up to school that day and were unable to come home. Identified as 2 students, Mason Shermerhorn, Christian Angulo, two teachers, Richard Aspinwall and Christina Irami. The students were just 14. And forgive me because one of those last names is a familiar last name to me. And so I had a bit of a reaction there. And I'm praying right now. Imagine the parents who didn't know what was going on, the loved ones who had family members, friends working there who didn't know if it was them. I get it. Law enforcement named the suspected gunman on Wednesday night as 14-year-old Colt Gray, student at the school who surrendered to authorities on the scene. He will be charged with murder and tried as an adult, authorities said. Colton Gray was questioned about online threats last year, the FBI said. The suspect had been on the radar of law enforcement officials for more than a year in connection with threats of a school shooting posted online, according to the FBI. When interviewed by local law enforcement officials, he denied making the threats. His father said that his son did not have unsupervised access to weapons. New York Times. I don't know why the weapons would be accessible at all after something like that comes to your attention. Isolated. I didn't say anything about banning everything everywhere. I said, if this was brought to your attention, I don't know why there would be any weapon, supervised or not, around a child who's expressing these thoughts.
Mhm.
Shooting was
I mean,
deadliest. Go ahead, yes.
well, I was gonna say, like, they're gonna try him as an adult, and like, fine, try him as an adult if that makes you feel better, but he's not an adult, he's a
Thank you.
child. The
Thank
adults in
you.
his life are the ones who failed him, and they failed not just him, but also the victims. And when I say victims, I'm also not referring just to the people who were killed or even injured during the shooting. All of the students, all of the parents, all of the faculty who were there that day, who were affected that day, they have like an unbelievable amount of trauma that they're going to have for the rest of their lives now. You know, that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're doing to an entire generation of people. The longer we don't do anything about gun violence, specifically in schools, that's what we're doing, is we're handicapping an entire generation.
It's outrageous. And I was going there too with tried as an adult because it's all part of this sick circular system here. Okay. Oh, that's it. Just try a 14-year-old as an adult. What? Get out of here. We
Yeah,
still need to be
exactly.
safe. We got to be safe here. And either you're an adult or a child. And I'm not advocating for anything right now. I'm just trying to make it make sense. Deadliest episode of school violence in Georgia history prompted an outpouring of sympathy and outrage, thoughts and prayers. President Biden, in a statement, lamented the attack as another horrific reminder of how gun violence continues to tear our communities apart. New York Times with the reporting. The family, though, is outraged. The family of the accused is outraged that he'll be tried as an adult. File that under too soon. Bad timing. Family of Georgia school shooter Colt Gray threatened to go full throttle after the 14-year-old was charged as an adult for murdering 4 people on Wednesday. Gray's relatives leapt to his defense within hours of him opening fire at Apalachee High School, where he allegedly killed 4 people, injured 9 others. Daily Mail with the family's reaction. The teenager's aunt now, Annie Polhamus Brown, took to Facebook during the aftermath, bringing up the issues he dealt with, saying, "She will take care of my nephew and what he needs on his side. Just check yourself before you speak about a child that never has to deal with the BS he saw on a daily basis," she said in the post, now deleted. His aunt posted this. "They're charging my 14-year-old nephew as an adult for murder. Y'all ready to see Polhamus' blood in full throttle? Nah, I wouldn't be either." What a stupid thing to post in the aftermath of people losing their lives. Your family member accused. I'll file it under shock and dismay and trauma. Let's just see what happens next. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp released a statement saying he was directing state resources to the Winder School. "I've directed all available state resources to respond to the incident at Apalachee High School." He went on to urge all Georgians to join My family, in praying for the safety of those in our classrooms, will continue to work with local, state, federal partners, blah, blah, blah. Instead of praying, I've had people blowing my phone up, some in the media, some in politics, some in assist professions, who are furious. Blowing up my phone, yeah, saying things like, there should be ads on every streaming service, YouTube, everything. And they should say things like, all of these politicians offering thoughts and prayers are complicit. One of them even said complicit in murder about a certain governor.
I
I
mean,
don't know if you can go that far, but I think instead of saying, join my family, join me in prayers, there's actually something else you can do here. Am I wrong? Have I gone too far?
no, they're the ones who can do whatever needs to be done, and they refuse to do so, you know? And there's always it's so repetitive, it's so redundant, it's so tiresome. We go through this every time there's a major school shooting, right? I don't care what kind of issues this child was dealing with. Why was he having to deal with all these adult issues without any adults in his life supporting him? And I know we can't catch every bad thing from happening before they happen, but we can see the caliber of adults that he had in his life. And what's so shocking to me is that they come out and they're acting as if, you know, kind of like he was a victim of whatever he was a victim of, his issues that he was dealing with or whatever. And they're very audacious in the way that they chose to go immediately to social media. There was no compassion for any of the victims, right? It's very indicative of this individualism that we have here in this country. And I think that individualism is what's tearing our country apart. This is a collectivism issue, right? This is an issue for the collective. When I was growing up, there were no school shootings like this. There was one, and it was like a big deal, right? And the reason why it wasn't as big of a problem the way it is today is because these children who were also going through things back in the 90s and the 2000s, we still had issues that we were dealing with, but we didn't have access to handguns, right? Like it just wasn't a thing. It was a systematic issue. Ever since they made these things more accessible, not just to younger people, but to adults, you know, they have them in the house and things like that. Ever since they did all of that, we've seen a trend upwards with these things. It's easy to track that trend. We know why it's happening. So every time they act like, oh, that's just what happens. No, that's what happens when you don't have safeguards in place. And that's all that most people are asking for is we just want safeguards in place to prevent these things from happening because they weren't happening before and now they are and they keep happening. And every time they happen, we go through the same rigmarole of, you know, thoughts and prayers. Oh, that's not enough. You should do more. Let's protest. Let's do something. Let's have the same exact conversation every single time. I'm tired of having this conversation. And I don't think that we should have to. We've been having this conversation for 20 years, Sharon. It's really unacceptable.
Yeah, it is. And when I look at how America responded to little 6-year-olds being slaughtered and unidentifiable, and every time one of these happens, their parents are going through it again. Not much hope. But you're right. You go on and charge a 14-year-old like that'll take care of the problem as an adult. It's stupid. Now, maybe I sound like the aunt now. She went a bit further, but it is stupid. Oh, a deranged, former president said. Deranged person, nothing to see here. Yas is right. Kids go through all kinds of things they have since the beginning of time. Are they not allowed to be kids and go through things? Okay. Who's in trouble when a 3-year-old repeatedly touches a hot stove and loses a hand or something? Is it the 3-year-old's fault? Asking for a friend.